Are you a college or university professor or instructor finding yourself in a position for teaching a student with an intellectual disability? Well, here are some ideas to help you. You might be wondering, why is this student here and expressing concern because you're not trained, you don't know what to do. Well, I want to talk a little bit about why the students are here, and maybe that'll help you get started. There is this whole national movement for post-secondary inclusion. And if you want information about that national movement, I suggest you go to the website www.thinkcollege.net, where there's a plethora of information that can help both professors and other faculty members and staff and students and their families better understand what this movement is about. But really what we're talking about is having equal access to post-secondary education for students with intellectual disabilities. And we want that equal access because we have found that inclusive opportunities truly do help people to gain independence. The Higher Education Opportunities Act is one law that helps to support this national movement, and it really does provide access for students with intellectual disabilities who are enrolled in specific programs to help them transition to adult life. What should you expect from the student with an intellectual disability in your class? Well, just about whatever you expect from any other student. You would expect that student to participate in meaningful ways. You would want them to put forth some effort in their coursework. You want them to be engaged in the class and the discussions and the group work or whatever else you have students engaged in. And of course, if a student is participating, putting forth effort and engaging in the instruction, then they're learning. And the hope is that you would have high expectations for the student to learn and gain access to the content from your class. You might be asking how you should accommodate the student. Well, certainly if the student is taking your course for credit, then you'd want to go through your Disability Services office on your campus to find out what kinds of accommodations you should be doing for this student. But if your student is auditing the course and not taking it for credit, then you might be able to provide some modifications to that student. If a student is taking a course for credit, then the types of accommodations fall under what we call reasonable accommodations for the student. So they don't change the instruction for the student, they just remove the barrier that the disability creates so that the student can access the content, similar to a person wearing eyeglasses or contacts. People wear those to have access to visual materials, and without the glasses or contacts, students may struggle. You or I may struggle without glasses or contacts. But with the glasses or contacts, students still are expected to achieve the same as other students. Now, as an institution of higher ed, we don't provide glasses for students, but an accommodation, a reasonable accommodation, falls within the same parameters as a pair of glasses would. Examples of accommodations include providing tests in alternative settings, like the Disability Services Office, where the student might have less distractions and a more quiet place to do work. We might provide extended time for assignments and tests, where again, the student might go to the Disability Services Office, and instead of the hour time period that everybody else has to take the test, the student has 2 hours to complete that assignment. We might offer students the use of technology, such as a calculator for completing mathematical equations, or tests and assignments provided in alternative formats, as long as they're still testing the same information that the other format had tested. Basically, what we're trying to do with an accommodation is level the playing field and provide equal access to students, even if they have a disability. Now, a modification, on the other hand, is a change to instruction or materials and and we would do that for students who are auditing our courses. And really the biggest modification that we can do is vary expectations for individual students. And that doesn't mean lower expectations or not have expectations for a student, but to vary those and to know that there might be particular goals or something in mind that the student wants to achieve through participation in your class. The modifications can be as creative and varied as needed to support that student, building off of their strengths, and really to try to help the student to meaningfully participate and engage in the course activities. The ultimate goal of a modification is really to make sure that the student does benefit somewhat from the class, and we know through research that students do benefit when challenged. Examples of modification might include things like a reduced number of assignments or test questions. So if you're giving a multiple choice test, they only choose between 2 answers instead of 4. It might be an alternative assignment altogether, something that they do that fits more toward their goals but still helps them to access course content. We might have to reduce the difficulty in assignments. But most of the time, if we just change expectations, then students can go ahead and do those assignments. And maybe the students get to complete a project with a peer instead of working alone or independently on an assignment. We're really talking about providing opportunity, and we do still expect students to learn. You may be fortunate enough to have the support of peer mentors or academic tutors or coaches that help the student either inside or outside of class, or both, to complete assignments and to do the work. If you don't have a peer mentor or tutor or coach that's assigned to the student to help support the student, you may consider asking a peer in the class to provide that mentoring support. You'd be surprised at how many often step up to the plate and want to provide that support for others. And research shows, and the research that we're conducting with peer mentors shows that many students benefit from, every student benefits from this experience. However, if we do have folks who are supporting students in the classroom, we do want to remember that it is still the student taking your class, a student with an intellectual disability, and we want to promote self-advocacy whenever possible. So when you do have a question about the student, make sure that you address it to the student with an intellectual disability and not to the mentoring partner that's in the class as well. If you need clarification from the mentoring partner, it's fine to follow up with him or her, but always address the student first. One of the things that might help to support you as you're engaging in this process of teaching a student with an intellectual disability in class is the concept of Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. And this concept actually comes from architecture, universal design, where buildings and structures are created in such a way so that they're accessible to people with physical disabilities. We've sort of expanded this concept of universal design to include a universal design for learning to help all kinds of diverse learners gain access to learning and to course content. There are 3 basic components to universal design for learning, and the first is multiple means of representation, the second is multiple means of expression, and the third is multiple means of engagement. Multiple means of representation is the way that we get information to students, show information to students. So we want to vary that throughout the semester or the grading period. We want to make sure we provide visual examples, that we provide modeling and demonstration, that students have opportunities to gain access through text, through audio and visual ways, through lecture and discussion, that there's lots of ways that students can gain that information. And we want to facilitate learning through a variety of senses and help students with a myriad of learning styles have access to that information. Multiple means of expression means providing options for students for how they express what they know. So instead of just the traditional research paper or final exam or midterm exam, that we might have students create a website or do a demonstration or create a slideshow. And we're not just talking about students with disabilities, any student. You might, as a final project, have 3 different options for a project. That's something that I do, where students can choose which project they want to do based on their strengths and based on their interests. And even within that choice, there are options for how they want to complete or demonstrate what they've gained from participating in that project. Multiple means of engagement means providing different options for how students are going to work with each other and work with materials to gain access to the content. So we might be using different forms of technology for students that we want them to be real hands-on with, but we might also do things like vary up whether the students are working independently in their seats, whether they're working in pairs, working in small groups, or even in whole class. And you can do all those things within one class period or just across different class periods. Sometimes they might be working in groups, sometimes in pairs, sometimes working with technology. The idea is to reach lots of different learning styles of lots of different students in your classes. The more you vary instruction, The more engaged all the students in your class will be, the more all students will learn, and the less modifications you'll need to plan for the students who do have disabilities. Universal design for learning benefits everyone. And it really is something that we want to try to be better about as instructors in institutions of higher learning, because our students will gain greatly from having that kind of instruction. Long gone are the days of pure lecture, and if you find yourself drawn to lecture, you want to think about alternative formats that you might use in order to help your students learn. If a lot of your students are failing a class or not doing well in class, that shouldn't be the expectation. That should be a red flag to us that we have to do something differently. And Universal Design for Learning offers us lots of different strategies for working with diverse students. If you're interested in Universal Design for Learning and would like to learn more, there are a lot of great resources out there. And here are three. The National Center on Universal Design for Learning has a great website. CAST also has a great website with lots of research-based strategies. And there's even a website for research evidence specifically related to Universal Design for Learning. I hope you found this slideshow helpful, and if you ever have questions, don't hesitate to ask.